Welcome, everybody. Glad to have you here. And I'm going to introduce our guest teacher, who's a former poet laureate. Mimi, what was your number?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Okay.
Well, Mimi was a poet laureate of Portsmouth previously. She is also the author of 4 collections of poetry. Her most recent is The Ark Remains, published by Deerbrook Editions. She has an essay that just came out in the July New York Times parenting section. You should check that out. And say a little bit about your Tanka Haibun books.
Okay. So I wrote my Haibun first, which is telling the story of racing back from North Carolina to be with my father when he was dying. I went not knowing he was going to die, even though he was in hospice. And I had a daily practice of writing haiku. And when I came back, I thought, I have to write the story of getting back here. It's so dramatic. And Mark de Carteret knew that I had been writing haiku daily. And he said to me, why don't you write a haibun? And I said, a what? So it was the first time I had heard of the word. And it was thanks to Mark that I ended up having this form that worked really well with what I had been doing, and then creating the text, story to go with it. And the same thing is true for the tanka. I did not know what a tanka was. Two things happened coincidentally that led me to it. I had a woman named Karen Forster in Australia tracked me down online and liked one of my poems. She's a sculptor, and she wanted to create work to go with one of my poems. Could she use it, and how much would that cost? I said, use it? Nothing, it's wonderful. And we've become friends. And so she asked me around the time that, around the time I was looking to do some new project, to do this project. She wanted us to focus on the word contain. And I said, contain. I probably need to look at a form. I wonder what form I'll write in. And then my friend Candace Stover handed me a book of poems by Sagyo, who is sort of 1100s Japanese poet, Buddhist priest, who has written in that form, had written that form for years and since a long, long time. So I had a request from my friend to think about the word contain, and I had a form. So if it weren't for the conversations with friends, I wouldn't have those books.
Nice story.
Waiting, yeah. I love stories. I mean, I was going to tell those stories anyway. I think that if I pay attention, I'll know that something's coming at me through somebody else. So that's how I have them. And I fell in love with the tanka. And the haibun I haven't tried again, but people like that book, which is, I think they just like the story. I'll tell you more about that when we get into it. But that's sort of the background.
Okay. How would you like to start?
I'll start. I'll keep going.
Okay.
Thank you. Good question. And please, people, if you have a question as I'm talking, this is not very formal. I'm not a formal person, plus it's too hot to be formal, and it's summertime. So I just want to relax into it. So to just follow up on the, was it the haiku and the tanka? The tanka, when I wrote those, I wrote them at the wee hours of the morning. And I always, for a whole year, every day, wherever I was, I wrote them. And I always thought I would do another one. But what holds me back is I really don't want to write at 3 in the morning anymore. And that seemed to be when I had my best thoughts. They could come more easily. So what I'd like to do is start with the haibun. And you all know, I think most of you know, that the haibun is kind of a hybrid. And was made famous by Basho, Matsuo Basho, who wrote The Narrow Road to the Deep North, and there are other travels in this book. This is a Penguin classic, which I think is a really good one. to get. Mine's from 1966 because it has other writings of his, and it also has a great introduction on the history of the haiku. And I know some of you have looked at the haiku today, and that particular introduction is really good. So as I said, I didn't know much about the forum till I started reading about it. And I realized that it was a forum that asked you to think about journeys. Actual journeys. He was on an actual journey. He was learning to let go of the material world. And also an internal journey. You know, what journeys are we taking? And as I said, this particular journey that I wrote about was about coming back to see my father and racing to get back here. So I will read from it, but before I do, I'm just going to read the opening section and the closing section so you can hear how a haiku might work within the context of the prose. And to be honest, I had haiku, I had prose. And when I was shaping the book, I said, well, what's missing? And I wrote some haiku to go with text, prose. And sometimes I wrote more prose. So it's not as if things got written the way it looks. It got pieced together. And what's one of the things I loved about it. So it's for my dad, Hyman Novak. And on the cover, can you see this cover? This is a piece of art by Karen Forster, the woman who I worked with a little later on the Tanka collection. And we worked on the word contain. She uses found objects. And the title of it is called Memory Won't Save Me. And I chose it because this wonderful arching branch, you know, sort of arching forward, but it could also be arching the wheel. I just thought it spoke really well with the book, and I was so happy there's something of hers that was appropriate for the cover. Okay, so it begins with a haiku, which I haven't seen much when I've looked at Haibun. They often start with prose. The river is cold. Shadows beneath shadows glide, dark and steep cliffs. Vivid dreams follow long days of writing. I feel my father hovering. Each day he visits as a feeling or as an image or more fully in dreams. I sit in a wooden rocker in the sun and hold the accumulating pages. I write to the end of what I think is the story of my father's last days, my rush home to see him before he dies. Once upon a time, then a branch snaps, breaks in every story. When at last I finish writing, my father disappears. Maybe he doesn't need you anymore, my husband Steve suggests when I tell him that my father has stopped visiting. He never needed me, I say. And so that's the setup for telling the story. It's a complicated story because it's about my father and about his dying and his large personality and his difficulties. And it looks, and I think you all know I don't even know if you can see this though, but it has long lines, has short lines. And then I thought I would read, because I want to leave time for you to write. I won't talk too much. The last part. This is the very end of the book. I wade out to a riffle that looks promising. Spring inches slowly into New Hampshire. I adjust to the cold water and plant my feet. I read the water and look for a likely hiding spot, a deep pool where trout might be feeding. The Lamprey River forks into two small braids. I cast upstream. I let out a bit more line, watching my back cast, staying clear of low-lying branches. Steve has tucked himself into a narrow run farther downstream, almost out of sight. When I cast again, slow, steady tears start to fall. I don't sob or shake. My eyes simply well up and tears spill over. Behind my sunglasses, my eyes are as wet as the river. I can't even see my line as it snakes downstream. River, my heart, break over cold stones, release my green wilderness. So those are the opening and closing haiku and text. And I'm just going to randomly open to a middle part. There's a lot of fly fishing. Oh, this is one of my favorite Tanka. I love Tanka haiku. I was sharing this with a writing group, and one of the members said, well, why didn't you just fly back? You know, we drove. Why didn't you just fly back and get there? And I thought about that, and I thought, oh my goodness, why didn't I? So I wrote this at full speed ahead. I don't fly back.
Do it.
Oh, is someone coming in?
I got here.
Oh, good. Who is it?
Hi. Sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry, I couldn't get in. I found my husband finally figured it out.
Oh, this is Beth Murphy.
Yeah.
Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay. I'm going to read a piece of the Haibun, sort of in the middle, prompted by a friend writer asking me why I didn't fly back. I don't fly back. I don't fly back because I'm afraid. I don't fly back because I'm afraid of being alone. I don't fly back because I'm afraid of being alone without Steve. I don't fly back because I'm afraid of being alone without Steve when I walk into my father's room. I don't fly back because I'm afraid of being alone without Steve when I walk into my father's room and he is already dead, or his bed is empty, or he's still alive and in pain, or he doesn't know me. I don't fly back alone without Steve because I'm afraid Steve will die driving home alone with the dog. Oh God, the dog would die too. I don't fly back alone without Steve because I will be alone with my family, and I fear I will not know whom I belong to when my father is dead, and my family will be both strangers and people I have known all my life. So Steve and I pack up and start the 900 miles home together. And then this is a haiku based on billboards as we're driving. Sign says, Jesus Christ is Lord of Hayward County. Sign says, eat at Bill's, which I think sums up driving through the South. You know, you've got Jesus Christ on every corner, and then you have barbecue, you know. So that was sort of a travel log. So what I thought, do you have questions? No, okay. So what I thought was, I have something, I've had pad of paper. Try writing something that is a piece of prose followed by a haiku, or start with a haiku. You've worked in them today a little bit, and see if it leads into a piece of prose. Don't think too hard on whether it's a journey, but it could be a journey that you've had and it's stuck in your head, you know, when you went to camp, or all these kids are going to college now. You know, what that journey might have been like, or just going from your house down to the water, what that journey is as you sort of unload yourself with whatever's in your head. So why don't we write for about 7 minutes, and I'll stop you. I'll check in with you at 5 minutes. So just write fast and don't worry about it.
We're talking prose at this moment.
Prose. Were you going to write a piece of prose with a haiku? You're going to both. Yeah. You're going to, yeah. And you can start with a haiku and then go to a piece of prose that might connect with it in some way. Or you can start with a piece of prose. And it can be written any way you want it to be written. You know. Mine started with a haiku, and then it led into prose, and the prose began, vivid dreams follow long days of writing. And it's the journey of beginning the writing about my father. So you might have a little journey tucked into your day today that you just remembered you had, or yesterday. If you have any questions while you're writing, just speak them out. Any other questions? Okay. Okay, how about one more minute?
Okay.
Anybody need more time? Okay, go ahead and take it. Okay, are you close?
Yes.
Okay, keep going. We don't need to worry about, we'll get to Tanka, but we don't need to worry about it. No one's breathing down my neck, right?
Right.
Brendan? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Is there somebody who would like to share what they did?
You got to wave your hand around if you'd like to.
Oh, go right ahead. Yes, that's Barbara. Yep. Unmute yourself.
I'm doing it.
Okay.
The flute has been calling for years, its haunting notes luring me forward, yet backward. There on a ridge gazing down river, I stand, swaddled daughter in my arms, deerskin garb covering bare arms, cedar flute resting in a pouch over my arm. Was I native so many years ago? A past life seemingly so real, so alive. Today that story lives inside this flute. The river pulses with each note I play. The daughter peeks through its holes. Deerskin protects its smooth wood. And the small piece notes send their call out, beckon the soul that once lived, stepping now forward.
Oh, how old is this daughter now?
I don't know. I don't have a daughter.
Oh,
I have a daughter, but I'm learning to play the flute.
yes. I thought maybe that's what you were doing.
Yeah, and I always, when I have those visions, I always see myself holding a child,
Oh my goodness.
but I don't have one.
Like an interior journey.
Yes.
Yeah. How's flute playing going?
Good. Yeah, it's taken a while, but it's very slow. I don't have a good sense of, they all sound alike.
All those notes.
All those notes sound alike. But Cynthia Chattis taught me how to wiggle my diaphragm, so that much I got.
You have to show us that before we sign out today.
There's a poem in there.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Anybody else? No?
I saw another hand.
Yeah, she's-
Wave your hand if you want to go. Nancy, did you? Nancy does.
Oh, good.
Nancy, you're muted. Nancy, we can't hear you.
Okay, I'm a newbie, so
There you go. Now
I think I'm okay now.
So good to see you.
Hi, Mimi.
Hi.
Hi. I'll start with the prose part and end with the haiku that I wrote in the last, well, that I started thinking about in the last section, but I just finished it now. So, pandemic journey, no guilt, stillness, silence, space for something new. Even virtual experience is welcome and surprisingly wonderful. But it is summer, and it is the garden that has been my stay. What will this pandemic trip be like when the days darken and winter comes on and the garden sleeps? And this is the haiku. Furry caterpillar in the hot sun, determined traveler across my sandal, hurry to winter.
Well, you certainly said something we're all thinking about. Yeah. I mean, are others feeling gratitude for this time that we have to be whatever we're going to be right now at this moment?
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes. And the light and the gardens. I know you're an avid gardener, Nancy. So and that is a journey that I haven't even thought of, even though I've thought about it every moment of my life right now. I overlooked it as a possible writing. So you had the haiku, and is that what prompted you to start to the garden? Are you still there?
I really don't know.
Oh, you don't know. Okay, that's even better. You don't know. Okay, good for you.
Well, I had just been finishing up that thought when this session began. So
Yeah.
there it was on my mind. Yeah.
It's kind of fun to have something that you can wrap another piece of writing around.
That's what happened.
Yeah, and that might be a good way to think about trying to go on with this pandemic journey writing that you have started. Sort of a daily experience, because you'll have another day tomorrow. You'll have another day. The garden will figure into it, and it'll change. The garden will change, and time will change, and it's a pretty compact form that as you write them, they accumulate into something. So that, I think you might have hit on something, since the dailiness of gardening is already in you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
You have any comments or thoughts?
No, I think that, well, it's just a big metaphor for me. Yes, I'm interested in gardening. And so you watch the changes and you think about them, how they relate to your life. And I am a little bit anxious about the winter, actually.
Yeah.
This time, and personally, I have much to be thankful for in my situation and my health. We all are thinking that way. We who are blessed with good situations and health, but there is something else that we have to think about.
Yes. I hope you continue writing about this in some.
I like the idea of accumulation.
Yeah.
And of a record.
Yeah.
Writing something and seeing where that goes.
Yeah. I bet you'll
giving a form to these emotions.
The form is so useful, and I'll talk about that when I get to the Tanka. Yes, it's very, very useful. And I've gone back to writing haiku every day because I needed something that was going to organize my brain in the morning. So, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Let's move on. And we're going to talk about the Tanka. So the Tanka that my friend Candace handed to me is a book by, I don't know where I am on this thing, by Sagyo, Saigyo. And as I said, he was sort of 1100 Japanese Buddhist priest. And this particular book, this particular copy of the book, it's translated by Burton Watson, W-A-T-S-O-N. It's a really good translation. I've read other translations. And the translation you get of Japanese poetry, or any poetry that you get in translation, the translator is as important as the original writing poet or writer. So Candace gave me this. I had this project to do something with the word contain, and I said, oh boy, look what I have. And then sadly, I had a subject, and the subject was my husband was ill. And so I thought, I'll devote this year to not writing about the illness, but during the time, I'll use this year to chronicle whatever's coming up. And the Tanka is older than the haiku, which you may know, by several hundred years. And instead of being 5-7-5, if you're counting syllables and strict on your haiku, which you don't need to be, a little aside, when I was working on my Tanka, was it my Tanka? I was working on my Tanka, and the Tanka are 5-7-5-7-7. That's a lot of space to play in when you're writing as small as a haiku. It gives you time to reflect. Those last two lines are enormously interesting and important in a Tanka, even though it's just 5 lines. Very popular form. People write Tanka all over the place. Just regular people are writing Tanka. So we're all regular people, so we can write Tanka too. And when I got started, I thought I'll fashion it the way Sagyo does, because it still gets its inspiration from nature. and he followed the seasons. So my book of Tanka, which has a cup on the cover, this is actually a shot of the Green River in Utah from outer space. And what's interesting for me about this particular image is that Steve and I fly fished the Green River in Utah. And the part where we fished is further down this way. But I love the connection of having stood in the water to fly fish and then seeing this thing, an image of it that came from a gazillion billion years ago up in the sky. So that's how that book got framed. And what I think I'll do is I'll read to you some of the poems. I'll start with a winter poem. The first poem in the book is a winter poem because that's when I started writing. Sometimes the moon, sometimes the sea lights the end of the road, and you walking the dog by the open field. And I'll read it again, and you can see if you can hear the break from line 3 to line 4, a pause at the end of the line. Sometimes the moon, sometimes the sea lights the end of the road, and you walking the dog by the open field. So it gently introduces a you and a dog. And the you and the dog appear all over the place in the book. Same dog, the dog that's here. And then I saw this and I wrote this poem, and I could see how it would reverberate with what I actually saw and what was happening in the life. When I saw the boat tipped on its side, a ghost ended our story. It did not matter that the tide would write it. I'll say it again. When I saw the boat tipped on its side, a ghost entered our story. It did not matter that the tide would write it. And I'll move into spring because I want you to just move through the seasons slightly with me. The snowy owl turned and looked at us in the morning light. If only we had stayed, what else might she have shown us? I'll read it again. The snowy owl turned and looked at us in the morning light. If only we had stayed, what else might she have shown us? And then I'll read a summer poem. It starts with a little tiny tanka about my two of my grandchildren. Dear people, on the island, the note in purple ink began. Dear Dory, we miss you too. The yellow room looks empty. Dear people on the island, the note in purple ink began. Dear Dory, we miss you too. The yellow room looks empty. And this is the other family and a grandson. William sings in the hammock, sings while chasing the dogs. Everywhere he goes. William sings in the hammock, sings while chasing the dogs. Everywhere he goes, he brings his song. And then I'll do autumn. I'll read the second to last poem. On my birthday, we traditionally hike the flume, which is a tradition that my daughters and I continued after Steve died. And they're gorgeous erratics if you haven't hiked that flume hike. We do it on the backside. We go up one way and down through the erratic field. And I do this all the time. My head goes right to the rock. What is in there? Tell me about time. I hold my forehead to the boulder's cold face and shut my eyes, not against what is coming, but for the wild hidden gorge. Once more. I hold my forehead to the boulder's cold face and shut my eyes, not against what is happening, but for the wild hidden gorge. So, 5 lines, something to do with nature or a season, what you can see outside your window at this very moment if you need to look at something. Present something, and then after that 3rd line, reflect on it. Or move slightly away from it, looking at it differently. Questions? Okay, let's write, and you'll get another total of 5 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, because this is shorter. 4 minutes. And if you're on a roll, do another one.
I got a little something I wasn't expecting.
Oh, good. Do you need one more minute? Yeah? No? No?
I'm good.
Okay. So finish that last thought. And these are kind of short. So I'd love to hear somebody share. So let's do that. Who would like to share? Just wave your hand. Okay, Tammy, go right ahead.
So I've been gardening a lot too. I guess we all have during lockdown. And I created a peace garden because my yard is very shady. So it's a peace garden with some rock sculpture. And this is what I wrote for Tanka. My peace garden would have dried up in this drought and been choked out by weeds if I didn't wage war against nature daily.
That's an interesting peace garden thought. The ironies abound. Great idea. The peace garden. Yeah. Any other comments? I don't need to be the only one who comments. I don't know anything special. Is this the one that surprised you when you said?
Yeah, I didn't see that coming at all.
Good. You can use it for your daily poem. Yeah. Somebody else? Just let your hand go.
I see Beth waving.
Oh, good. Great. Go right ahead.
Okay, I'm new at this Zoom, so do my best here. Forest shadows cast, dark clouds cower in the heat, shelter under the oak, the long afternoon bending towards September's quiet.
Oh. Yeah. I could feel it turn,
Yeah.
towards something. I could feel that when you read it and bending. And you had the word September, right? September.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, September's quiet. September's a great, I love September as a word. It says a lot.
It's also the time when kids go back to school. Like my daughter's going back to college, and so it's also a little quieter, like sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's an ending and a beginning.
mhm.
It's interesting. Thank you. You're doing great with Zoom.
Thank you. It's nerve-wracking.
It is.
It's different. Yeah. Another one?
I see Mark's hand.
Oh, good. Go ahead.
Mark, we can't hear you. There you go.
There we go. No, I was just talking to myself as I was.
Well, share it.
Bees embarrass themselves feeding on hydrangeas, the blossoms moving without moving. I see the neighbor's dog, still not sure if I should pat him.
Wow. Can you read it again?
Sure.
Thank you.
Bees embarrass themselves feeding on hydrangeas, the blossoms moving without moving. I see the neighbor's dog, still not sure if I should pat him.
I love it. That's a lovely Tanka.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny with the bees buzzing and making themselves crazy, and then touching the dog, like the fear, should I touch the dog? And then we've got these bees, and they connect somehow.
Yeah, they're just
Yeah, it was a kind of zigzag.
going about their business.
Yeah, yeah. And the dog just wants to bite your hand off. I don't
And
know.
you're the intruder out there.
Yeah,
It's really you that's the intruder
yeah.
in the nature.
Say to you. Yeah, great sounds. Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Somebody else.
I'm looking for hands.
Me
Oh, I
too.
see Barb.
Oh, good, Barb.
No, I just have a question.
What's the
Like-
question?
Yeah, like Tammy, I could really see your turn, but I couldn't see Mark's. and mine don't usually have terms. That's hard for me.
I don't think they have to have turns. It's just that's something that I like working with.
Oh, I thought they had to.
Well, they tend to do that. Kind of
And I-
like the last line in the haiku.
Yeah,
does
because Tammy's an expert at it. She
Yeah.
just, her pug laying there, and then the turn was so obvious.
I would actually say that Mark's was more masterful because his turn is subtle. I'm slapping you upside the head with my turn, but Mark's is very subtle. It's there.
See, it's so subtle, I don't get it.
It was the dog. It turned to this situation with the dog.
Yeah.
Now let's let Mark respond.
Yeah, Mark, what'd you do?
I'll just let it speak for itself.
Yeah, that's good too.
Yeah. The bees have a lot to say. It's, I don't really think it's wrong to have a turn be obvious. And I don't know that it's better to have it be slight, but it is really cool when you don't know how it happened.
Yes.
Then you are a bigger participant in
Yes.
the writing itself. I remember I wrote this tiny, tiny tanka that said, "Since the news of your illness, the ground has been too hard to plant bulbs."
Yeah.
That doesn't, with that turn, but it was embedded, and sometimes I think those just come unbidden as you keep writing. One
when-
just
when you
finds
did
itself.
When you did your workshop in Rye,
Yeah,
all your turns seem to have something still to do with the first lines.
yep. They seem to go back to it.
Yeah.
I'll read the one that I wrote now. "Nothing counts but sky and bird and wind and wing and berries adding up. Now take it easy. Now remember the hawk at dawn." Just
Now I'll read mine, and
Oh,
because
good.
the ending is probably too cerebral. Bees nuzzle flowers, climbing into each blossom, pollen on their feet. I long to share that sweet spot where mystery hides.
Oh,
But it's
I think you did that. I think you did it. It's okay. Mystery is an interesting word at that point.
yeah. I had abandon.
Okay.
Where abandon hides.
That
And
was mystery.
changed.
I think these things happen fast sometimes. But boy, I'll tell you, when I wrote a whole book of them, I did a lot of revision.
Yes.
Don't ask me how I did, but I did. I revised things, and I don't know how that happened. Right up until I was handing it off to my publisher. So these things look simple, but they're so delicate and strong at the same time. They hold a lot. To think about what's her name? Chase Twitchell. I think she wrote on the back of the book. I don't know who it was, but Jane Hirschfeld said the tanka hold a whole universe. If you get your tanka right, it holds the whole universe, which is a really cool concept. Yeah. Who else would like to share? You got another one? Anybody? No? Well, we have time
Just for a question or two. That's about it.
time for a question or two. Yep. So who has a question or a comment or observation or resolution? Anybody going to write Tanka at 3 a.m.?
Hopefully not, but maybe.
Anybody else? No questions?
was just thinking that Martha Rhodes always said that if you just wrote anything, it's like going to the gym.
Yeah.
And I was thinking that this would be a very not boring, not a boring way to exercise the writing muscle, because you're not just writing anything. You're challenging yourself to see and then translate what you see.
Yeah.
And come out of yourself a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh, you do. You come out of yourself. You emerge somewhere, or somebody emerges. I think it's always searching for community. I think it's always searching for another. I think when we look at nature, it turns us back into who am I? Where am I? It's not useless. It's necessary, and it's not only decorative.
That's a beautiful note to end on.
Yeah. I'd like to thank all of you who showed up. It's especially sweet to see Nancy, whom I haven't seen in several years now, and to see old faces and friends. I was too busy to get on the other session, so I apologize. But thank you, Tammi, for thinking to do this. And
Thank you very much for doing it. And I need to thank the Portsmouth Public Library and the New Hampshire Humanities Council for all of their support of us. And thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
people have a really lovely evening.
You too.
Take care.